Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganara Ganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivishkam Vitam Sya Om Jnana Timaranda Shagyana Jana Shilakaya Chakshuram Milidam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurava Bhishtam Supurakam Garaganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipanam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Bidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Vande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noe Bija Pranam Devam Divyatanam Suchanda Baranam Balarka Chelanchitam Sandrananda Puram Sadeka Varanam Vairagya Vidyambunim Sri Siddhanta Nidhim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Banditam Shubhanam Madeka Sharanam Nyashishwara Sridharam Vansha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Nama Namo Mahabaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratabhishe Namah. So we're hearing from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, with translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Adi-lila, Chapter 2, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This chapter explains that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna Himself. Therefore, the Brahman effulgence is the bodily luster of Lord Chaitanya, and the localized supersoul situated in the heart of every living entity is his partial representation. The Purusha avatars are also explained in this connection. Mahavishnu is a reservoir of all conditioned souls, but is confirmed in the authoritative scriptures. Lord Krishna is the ultimate fountainhead, the source of numerous planetary expansions, including Narayan, who is generally accepted by Mayavadi philosophers to be the absolute truth. The Lord's manifestation of Prabhava and Vaibhava expansions, as well as partial incarnations and incarnations with delegated powers, are also explained. Lord Krishna's ages of boyhood and youth are discussed, and it is explained that his age at the beginning of youth is his eternal form. The spiritual sky contains innumerable spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas, which are manifestations of the Supreme Lord's internal energy. Innumerable material universes are summarily exhibited by his external energy, and the living entities are manifested by his marginal energy. Because Lord Krishna Chaitanya is not different from Lord Krishna, he is the cause of all causes. There is no cause beyond him. He is eternal, and his form is spiritual. Lord Chaitanya is directly the Supreme Lord Krishna, as the evidence of authoritative scriptures proves. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entity with him. So this is going on. Chapter 2, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Chaitanya Prabhum Bande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Taranana Matagraha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusive truth. which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusive truth, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. By the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even an inexperienced boy with no educational culture can be saved from the ocean of nescience, which is full of various types of philosophical doctrines that are like dangerous aquatic animals. The philosophy of the Buddha, the argumentative presentations of the Jnanis, the yoga systems of Patanjali and Gautama, and the systems of philosophers like Kanada, Kapila, and Dattatreya are dangerous creatures in the ocean of nescience. By the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can have real understanding of the essence of knowledge by avoiding these sectarian views and accepting the lotus feet of Krishna as the ultimate goal of life. Let us all worship Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his gracious mercy to the conditioned souls. Krishna Kirtana Gana Nartana Kala Pato Jani Brajita Sad Bhaktavali Hamsha Chakra Marupa Shreni Viharaspadam Karana Nandi Kala Dvanar Vahatu Me Jiva Maru Prangane Sri Chaitanya Dayanide Taba Lasal-lila Shuddha Svarduni. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges waters of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name, which are the pleasure abodes of unalloyed devotees. These devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. The river's flowing produces a melodious sound that gladdens their ears. O my merciful Lord Chaitanya, may the nectarian Ganges waters of your transcendental activities flow on the surface of my desert-like tongue. Beautifying these waters are the lotus flowers of singing, dancing, and loud chanting of Krishna's holy name, which are the pleasure abodes of unalloyed devotees. These devotees are compared to swans, ducks, and bees. The river's flowing produces a melodious sound that gladdens their ears. Our tongues always engage in vibrating useless sounds that do not help us realize transcendental peace. The tongue is compared to a desert because a desert needs a constant supply of refreshing water to make it fertile and fruitful. Water is the substance most needed in the desert. The transient pleasure derived from mundane topics of art, culture, politics, sociology, dry philosophy, poetry, and so on is compared to a mere drop of water, because although such topics have a qualitative feature of transcendental pleasure, they are saturated with the modes of material nature. Therefore, neither collectively nor individually can they satisfy the vast requirements of the desert-like tongue, despite crying in various conferences. Therefore, the desert-like tongue continues to be parched. For this reason, people from all parts of the world must call for the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who are compared to swans swimming around the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or bees humming around his lotus feet in transcendental pleasure, searching for honey. The dryness of material happiness cannot be moistened by so-called philosophers who cry for Brahman, liberation, and similar dry speculative objects. The urge of the soul proper is different. The soul can be solaced only by the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his many bona fide devotees who never leave the lotus feet of the Lord to become imitation Mahaprabhus, but all cling to his lotus feet like bees that never leave a honey-soaked lotus flower. Lord Chaitanya's movement of Krishna consciousness is full of dancing and singing about the pastimes of Lord Krishna. It is compared herein to the pure waters of the Ganges, which are full of lotus flowers. The enjoyers of these lotus flowers are the pure devotees who are like bees and swans. They chant like the flowing of the Ganges, the river of the celestial kingdom. The author desires such sweetly flowing waves to cover his tongue. He humbly compares himself to materialistic persons who always engage in dry talks from which they derive no satisfaction. If they were to use their dry tongues to chant the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as exemplified by Lord Chaitanya, they would taste sweet nectar and enjoy life. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. All glories to Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Sri Nityananda. All glories to Advaita Chandra and all glories to the devotees of Lord Gauranga. Tritiya Shlokarartha Kori Vivaran Vastu Nirdesha Rupa Mangalacharan. Let me describe the meaning of the third verse of the verse 14. It is an auspicious vibration that describes the absolute truth. So it's going to give this Vastu Nirdesh, the purpose or the primary reason of the primary purpose of the book. Yad Advaitam Brahmo Panishadi Tad Api Ashyat Tanuba Ya Atman Tarjami Purusha Iti Sosham Savibhavaha Shad Aishvaryai Purno Ya Iha Bhagavan Sasvayam Nayam Na Chaitanyat Krishna's Jagati Paratatvam Paramiha. What the Upanishads describe as the impersonal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord known as the Supersoul is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna Himself, full with opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. The compilers of the Upanishads speak very highly of the impersonal Brahman. The Upanishads, which are considered the most elevated portion of the Vedic literatures, are meant for persons who desire to get free from material association and who therefore approach a bona fide spiritual master for enlightenment. The prefix upa indicates that one must receive knowledge about the absolute truth from a spiritual master. One who has faith in his spiritual master actually receives transcendental instruction, and as his attachment for material life slackens, he is able to advance on the spiritual path. Knowledge of the transcendental science of the Upanishads can free one from the entanglement of existence in the material world, and when thus liberated, one can be elevated to the spiritual kingdom of the Supreme Personality of Godhead by advancement in spiritual life. The beginning of spiritual enlightenment is realization of impersonal Brahman. Such realization is effected by gradual negation of material variegatedness. Impersonal Brahman realization is the partial, distant experience of the absolute truth that one achieves through the rational approach. It is compared to one's seeing a hill from a distance and taking it to be a smoky cloud. A hill is not a smoky cloud, but it appears to be one from a distance because of our imperfect vision. In imperfect or smoky realization of the absolute truth, spiritual variegatedness is consciousness. In imperfect or smoky realization of the absolute truth, spiritual variegatedness is conspicuous by its absence. This experience is therefore called Advaitavad, or realization of the oneness of the absolute. The impersonal glowing effulgence of Brahman consists only of the personal bodily rays of the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna. Since Sri Gaurasundar, or Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is identical with Sri Krishna himself, the Brahman effulgence consists of the rays of his transcendental body. Similarly, the Supersoul, which is called the Paramatma, is a plenary representation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Antarjami, the Supersoul in everyone's heart, is the controller of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, wherein Lord Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishtaha. I am situated in everyone's heart. The Bhagavad Gita also states, Bhuktaram yagyatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram, indicating that the Supreme Lord, acting in his expansion as the Supersoul, is the proprietor of everything. Similarly, the Brahma Samhita states, Andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. The Lord is present everywhere, within the heart of every living entity, and within each and every atom as well. Thus, by this Supersoul feature, the Lord is all-pervading. Furthermore, Lord Chaitanya is also the master of all wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because he is Sri Krishna himself. He is described as Purusha, or complete. He is described as Purna, or complete. In the feature of Lord Chaitanya, the Lord is an ideal renouncer, just as Sri Rama was an ideal king. Lord Chaitanya accepted the order of sannyas and exemplified exceedingly wonderful principles in his own life. No one can compare to him in the order of sannyas. Although in Kali Yuga acceptance of the sannyas order is generally forbidden, Lord Chaitanya accepted it because he is complete in renunciation. Others cannot imitate him, but can only follow in his footsteps as far as possible. Those who are unfit for this order of life are strictly forbidden by the injunctions of the Shastras to accept it. Lord Chaitanya, however, is complete in renunciation as well as all other opulences. He is therefore the highest principle of the Absolute Truth. By an analytical study of the truth of Lord Chaitanya, one will find that he is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. No one is greater than or even equal to him. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Thus it is here confirmed that there is no truth higher than Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya. The impersonal Brahman is the goal of those who cultivate the study of books of transcendental knowledge, and the Supersoul is the goal of those who perform the yoga practices. One who knows the Supreme Personality of Godhead surpasses realization of both Brahman and Paramatma, because Bhagavan is the ultimate platform of absolute knowledge. The personality of Godhead is a complete form of Satchidananda, full life, knowledge, and bliss. By realization of the Sat portion of the complete whole, unlimited existence, one realizes the impersonal Brahman aspect of the Lord. By realization of the Chit portion of the complete whole, unlimited knowledge, one can realize the localized aspect of the Lord, the Paramatma. But neither of these partial realizations of the complete whole can help one realize Ananda or complete bliss. Without such realization of Ananda, knowledge of the Absolute Truth is incomplete. This verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is confirmed by a parallel statement in the Tattva Sandarbha by Srila Jiva Goswami. In the 9th part of the Tattva Sandarbha, it is said that the Absolute Truth is sometimes approached as impersonal Brahman, which, although spiritual, is only a partial representation of the Absolute Truth. Narayan, the predominating deity in Vaikuntha, is to be known as an expansion of Sri Krishna, but Sri Krishna is the Supreme Absolute Truth, the object of the transcendental love of all living entities. Brahman Atma Bhagavan Anubhadatin Anga Prabha Amsha Swarup Tina Videya China. Impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead are three subjects, and the glowing effulgence, the partial manifestation, and the original form are their three respective predicates. Personal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the personality of Godhead are three subjects, and the glowing effulgence, the partial manifestation, and the original form are their three respective predicates. Anuvad age pache, videya stapan, se arta koheshuna, shastra vivaran. A predicate always follows its subject. Now I shall explain the meaning of this verse according to the revealed scriptures. Svayam Bhagavan Krishna, Vishnu, Paratattva, Purna Jnana, Purnananda, Parama Mahatva. Krishna, the original form of the personality of Godhead, is the summum bonum of the all-pervading Vishnu. He is the perfect knowledge and all-perfect bliss. He is the supreme transcendence. So just a little bit of understanding of grammar can make you and help you in understanding what's being discussed here. We have subject and predicate. So a subject is the subject, and then the predicate is like the verb or the phrase which just tells what the subject is doing. But you have to define the subject before you can talk about the predicate, because that must be known who you're talking about, who is being referred to. That's just grammar. So here it says, Krishna, the original form of the personality of Godhead, is the summum bonum of the all-pervading Vishnu. He is the perfect knowledge and all perfect bliss. He is the supreme transcendence. Here, before that, one verse before, it says, predicate always follows its subject. Now I shall explain the meaning of this verse according to the revealed scriptures. Nanda Sutta Bole Jare Bhagavate Gai Say Krishna Vatirna Chaitanya Gosai. He whom Srimad Bhagavatam describes as the son of Nanda Maharaj has descended to earth as Lord Chaitanya. According to the rules of rhetorical arrangement for efficient composition in literature, a subject should be mentioned before its predicate. The Vedic literature frequently mentions Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and therefore these three terms are widely known as the subjects of transcendental understanding. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. But it is not widely known that what is approached as the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental body. But it is not widely known that what is approached as the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's transcendental body. Nor is it widely known that the Supersoul, or Paramatma, is only a partial representation of Lord Chaitanya, who is identical with Bhagavan himself. Therefore, the descriptions of Brahman as the effulgence of Lord Chaitanya, the Paramatma as his partial representation, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as identical with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, must be verified by evidence from authoritative Vedic literatures. The author wants to establish first that the essence of the Vedas is the Vishnu Tattva, the absolute truth. Vishnu, the all-pervading Godhead. The author wants to establish first that the essence of the Vedas is the Vishnu Tattva, the absolute truth, Vishnu, the all-pervading Godhead. The Vishnu Tattva has different categories, of which the highest is Lord Krishna, the ultimate Vishnu Tattva, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita and throughout the Vedic literatures. The Vishnu Tattva has different categories, of which the highest is Lord Krishna, the ultimate Vishnu Tattva, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita and throughout the Vedic literature. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the same Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is described as Nanda Sutta, the son of King Nanda. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami states that Nanda Sutta has again appeared as Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he bases this statement on his understanding that the Vedic literature concludes that there is no difference between Lord Krishna and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This the author will prove. If it is thus proved that Sri Krishna is the origin of all tattvas, truths, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, and that there is no difference between Sri Krishna and Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it will not be difficult to understand that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also the same origin of all tattvas, the same absolute truth as he is revealed to students of different realizations is called Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Prakasha Vishesha Prabha Dharetinam Brahman Brahma Paramatma Ara Svayam Bhagavan. In terms of his various manifestations, he is known in three features called the impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma, and the original personality of Godhead. Srila Jiva Goswami has explained the word Bhagavan in his Bhagavad Sandarbha. The personality of Godhead, being full of all conceivable and inconceivable potencies, is the absolute supreme whole. Impersonal Brahman is a partial manifestation of the absolute truth, realized in the absence of such complete potencies. The first syllable of the word Bhagavan is Ba, which means sustainer and protector. The next letter, Ga, means leader, pusher, and creator. Va means dwelling. All living beings dwell in the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord dwells within the heart of every living being. Combining all these concepts, the word Bhagavan carries the import of inconceivable potency in knowledge, energy, strength, opulence, power, and influence, devoid of all varieties of inferiority. Without such inconceivable potencies, one cannot fully sustain or protect. Our modern civilization is sustained by scientific arrangements devised by many great scientific brains. We can just imagine, therefore, the gigantic brain whose arrangements sustain the gravity of the unlimited number of planets and satellites, and who creates the unlimited space in which they float. If one considers the intelligence needed to orbit man-made satellites, one cannot be fooled into thinking that there is not a gigantic intelligence responsible for the arrangements of the various planetary systems. There is no reason to believe that all the gigantic planets float in space without the superior arrangement of a superior intelligence. This subject is clearly dealt with in the Bhagavad Gita, where the personality of Godhead says, I enter into every planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. Were the planets not held in the grip of the personality of Godhead, they would all scatter like dust in the air. Modern scientists can only practically explain this inconceivable strength of the personality of Godhead. The potencies of the syllables ba, ga, and va apply in terms of many different meanings. Through his different potent agents, the Lord protects and sustains everything, but he himself personally protects and sustains only his devotees, just as a king personally sustains and protects his own children while entrusting the protection and sustenance of the state to various administrative agents. The Lord is the leader of his devotees, as we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, which mentions that the personality of Godhead personally instructs his loving devotees how to make certain progress on this path of devotion and thus surely approach the kingdom of God. The Lord is also the recipient of all the adoration offered by his devotees, for whom he is the objective and the goal. For his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of God. Sometimes he does this by taking away a devotee's material attachments by force and baffling all his material protective agents. For thus the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. You hear that? Sometimes the Lord says, for his devotees, the Lord creates a favorable condition for developing a sense of transcendental love of God. Sometimes he does this by taking away a devotee's material attachments by force and baffling all his material protective agents. For thus the devotee must completely depend on the Lord's protection. In this way, the Lord proves himself the leader of his devotees. The Lord is not directly attached to the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, for he is eternally busy in the enjoyment of transcendental bliss with paraphernalia composed of his internal potencies. Yet, as the initiator of the material energy, as well as the marginal potency, the living beings, he expands himself as the Purusha avatars, who are invested with potencies similar to his. The Purusha avatars are also in the category of Bhagavat Tattva, because each and every one of them is identical with the original form, the personality of Godhead. The living entities are his infinitesimal particles and are qualitatively one with him. They are sent into this material world for material enjoyment to fulfill their desires to be independent individuals, but still they are subject to the supreme will of the Lord. The Lord deputes himself in the state of supersoul to supervise the arrangements for such material enjoyment. The example of a temporary fair is quite appropriate in this connection. If the citizens of a state assemble in a fair to enjoy for a short period, the government deputes a special officer to supervise it. Such an officer is invested with all government power, and therefore he is identical with the government. When the fair is over, there is no need for such an officer, and he returns home. The Paramatma is compared to such an officer. The living beings are not at all. The living beings are not all in all. The living beings are not all in all. They are undoubtedly parts of the Supreme Lord and are qualitatively one with Him, yet they are subject to His control. Thus they are never equal to the Lord or one with Him. The Lord who associates with the living beings is the Paramatma, or Supreme Living Being. No one, therefore, should view the tiny living beings and Supreme Living Being to be on an equal level. The all-pervading truth that exists eternally during the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world, and in which the living beings rest in trance, is called the impersonal Brahman. Vedanti tat vavidas tatvam yadzgyanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabhyate. So, the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is presenting, an understanding, and we say that here we are understanding ontology. Ontology means there is deep description of who the personalities of the Chaitanya associated with Mahaprabhu are, such as Nityananda Prabhu, Advaitacharya, Gadadhar Pandit, Srivas Thakur, and so many other persons, who they actually are. That's understanding of who they actually are is very necessary for understanding the pastimes of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which will later be described. That ontology means to understand. If you understand something of the substance, then you can understand. Then you can understand the Lord's devotees and their activities. So the beginning 12 chapters, we can say, especially, give you some understanding of ontology. A word that's described by Srila Sridhar Maharaj that will help us in understanding the activities which are later taking place by his devotees, because you'll have some understanding of who these persons are. If you understand who they are, then you can understand why they're acting in particular ways. Just like if you understand that Mahaprabhu is Svayam Bhagavan, then that will explain many of his later activities. Why he's the Lord for all his devotees, why he's worshipped by his devotees. And you can understand his different expansions, like the expansion of Krishna is Balaram. Balaram is that Lord Nityananda Prabhu. And then from Balaram comes the further expansions of Mahashankarshan and the Chaturvyuha, Pradyumna, Niruddha, Mahashankarshan and Mahashankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva, is it? So, then there's a second quadruple expansion. Then from that expansion comes the Purusha avatars, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Karnadakshai Vishnu. So Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu. Looking up here. We have the quadruple expansions, Chaturvyuha. Vedanti tat vavidas tatvam yadsgyanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabhyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth say that it is non-dual knowledge and is called impersonal Brahman, the localized Paramatma and the personality of Godhead. This Sanskrit verse appears as the 11th verse of the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Sutta Goswami answers the questions of the sages headed by Shanaka Rishi concerning the essence of all scriptural injunctions. Tatvavida refers to persons who have knowledge of the absolute truth. They can certainly understand knowledge without duality because they are on the spiritual platform. The absolute truth is known sometimes as Brahman, sometimes as Paramatma, and sometimes as Bhagavan. Persons who are in knowledge of the truth know that one who tries to approach the absolute simply by mental speculation will ultimately realize the impersonal Brahman, and one who tries to approach the absolute truth through yoga practice will be able to realize Paramatma. But one who has complete knowledge and spiritual understanding realizes the spiritual form of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Devotees of the personality of Godhead know that Sri Krishna, the son of the king of Braj, is the absolute truth. They do not discriminate between Sri Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes. And one who wants to separate the Lord's absolute name, form, and qualities from the Lord himself must be understood to be lacking in absolute knowledge. A pure devotee knows that when he chants the transcendental name Krishna, Sri Krishna is present as transcendental sound. He therefore chants with full respect and veneration. When he sees the forms of Sri Krishna, he does not see anything different from the Lord. If one sees otherwise, he must be considered untrained in absolute knowledge. This lack of absolute knowledge is called Maya. One who is not Krishna conscious is ruled by the spell of Maya under the control of a duality in knowledge. In the absolute, all manifestations of the Supreme Lord are non-dual, just as the multifarious forms of Vishnu, the controller of Maya, are non-dual. Empiric philosophers who pursue the impersonal Brahman accept only the knowledge that the personality of the living entity is not different from the personality of the Supreme Lord. And mystic yogis who try to locate the Paramatma accept only the knowledge that the pure soul is not different from the super soul. The absolute conception of a pure devotee, however, includes all others. A devotee does not see anything except in his relationship with Krishna, and therefore his realization is the most perfect of all. Daharangara Shuddha Kirana Mandal Upanishad Kohitari Brahma Sunirmal. What the Upanishads call the transcendental impersonal Brahman is the realm of the glowing effulgence of the same Supreme Person. These mantras of the Mundaka Upanishad give information regarding the bodily effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They state, Hiranmaye Pare Koshe Virajam Brahma Nishkalam Taj Shubram Jyotisham Jyotish Tadyad Atmavido Vidu Na Tatra Suryo Bhati Na Chandra Tarakam Nema Vidyuto Bhanti Kuto Yam Agni Tam Eva Bantam Anubhate Sarvam Tashyabasha Sarvam Idam Vibhati Brahmai Vedam Amritam Purastad Brahma Paschad Brahma Dakshinatas Chotarena Adas Chordvam Cha Prashritam Brahmai Vedam Vishvam Idam Varishtam. In the spiritual realm, beyond the material covering, is the unlimited Brahman effulgence, which is free from material contamination. That effulgent white light is understood by transcendentalists to be the light of all lights. In that realm, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity for illumination. Indeed, whatever illumination appears in the material world is only a reflection of that supreme illumination. That Brahman is in front and in back, in the north, south, east, and west, and also overhead and below. In other words, that supreme Brahman effulgence spreads throughout both the material and spiritual skies. Charma chakke deke jaiche surya nirvises, gyanamarge loite nare krishnera vises. As with the naked eye, one cannot know the sun except as a glowing substance. Merely by philosophical speculation, one cannot understand Lord Krishna's transcendental varieties. Yasha Prabha Prabhavata Jagad Andakoti Kotish Vasesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Binan Tad Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam Govindamari Parusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is endowed with great power. The glowing effulgence of his transcendental form is the impersonal Brahman, which is absolute, complete, and unlimited, and which displays the varieties of countless planets with their different opulences in millions and millions of universes. This verse appears in the Brahma Samhita. Each and every one of the countless universes is full of innumerable planets with different constitutions and atmospheres. All these come from the unlimited non-dual Brahman or complete whole, which exists in absolute knowledge. The origin of that unlimited Brahman effulgence is the transcendental body of Govinda, who is offered respectful obeisances as the original and supreme personality of Godhead. Koti koti brahmande je brahmara vibhuti se brahma govindera hoy anga kanti. Lord Brahma said, the opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions. The opulences of the impersonal Brahman spread throughout the millions and millions of universes. That Brahman is but the bodily effulgence of Govinda. Se Govinda bhajyami te homorapati tahara prasade mora hoy shrishti shakti. I worship Govinda, who is my Lord. Only by his grace am I empowered to create the universe. Although the sun is situated far away from the other planets, its rays sustain and maintain them all. Indeed, the sun diffuses its heat and light all over the universe. Similarly, the Supreme Sun, Govinda, diffuses his heat and light everywhere in the form of his different potencies. The sun's heat and light are non-different from the sun. In the same way, the unlimited potencies of Govinda are non-different from Govinda himself. Therefore, the all-pervasive Brahman is the all-pervasive Govinda. The Bhagavad Gita clearly mentions that the impersonal Brahman is dependent upon Govinda. That is the real conception of absolute knowledge. So I'm going to stop here. And in our next reading, we'll continue from this point. Hare Nama Krishna Jarabhaya Nama Hare Nama Krishna Jarabhaya Nama Jarabhaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Jarabhaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Giridhari Gopinatha Marana Mohan Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Garadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Garadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath Jai Rupa Sanatam Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan H.I. Gosai Kori Charana Bandhan Jahoite Vignana Shamishta Puran Jahoite Vignana Shamishta Puran H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas H.I. Gosai Jar Mui Taradas Tasabar Padarenu Mora Panchagras Tasabar Padarenu Mora Panchagras Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanivas Tader Charana Sevi Bhakta Sanivas Janame More Abilas Janame More Abilas H.I. Gosai Jabe Branche Koilabas, H.I. Gosai Jabe Branche Koilabas, Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash, Radha Krishna Nitya Lila Korila Prakash, Anande Bolo Hari Bansha Brindavan, Anande Bolo Hari Bansha Brindavan, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Manjayaman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pare Manjayaman, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas, Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koryas, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratam Udas, Harinam Sankirtana Kohe Naratam Udas, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jai Saparikara Shishi Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridharaju Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Shtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Shtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramansa Paravajakacharya Shtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath, Shri Jiva Gopal Bhattadasha Raghunath, Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai, Premzigo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Vishvabaranya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Kushamashra Maharaj Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan. Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Ju Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo.